The Haunting of the Abandoned Station. The moon cast a ghostly glow over the old railway station, its once busy platforms now silent and deserted. Sarah, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and fear, stepped cautiously onto the cracked pavement. Beside her, Mike, a seasoned local guide with stories as deep as the wrinkles on his face, led the way. "This place has been abandoned for years," Sarah whispered, her voice barely rising above the eerie stillness. She fumbled with her camera, eager to document every shadow and whisper of the night. As they ventured deeper, the station seemed to awaken. The air grew colder, and the faint sound of a distant train whistle sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Mike stopped suddenly, his eyes fixed on the walls. "Look," he said, pointing to the graffiti that adorned the crumbling bricks. The messages were cryptic, words of warning and despair, as if those who wrote them had known something terrible. Sarah's camera flashed, capturing the eerie messages. She could feel the weight of the unseen eyes upon them, the secrets of the past lurking in the shadows. As they moved through the station, the air was filled with the soft sounds of footsteps and whispers, echoes of a time long gone. "There are stories," Mike began, his voice low, "of a train that derailed here many years ago. They say it still roams these tracks, a ghostly echo of its final journey." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Her logical mind told her it was just a story, but the fear in Mike's eyes was real. They continued on, the only light coming from Sarah's camera and the faint moonlight that seeped through the broken roof. Suddenly, a loud screech pierced the silence. They froze, the sound echoing around them like a cry from another world. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she turned slowly. There, on the tracks, stood a train, its ghostly form shimmering in the moonlight, its windows dark and empty. "It can't be," she gasped, her camera raised in trembling hands. But as she looked through the lens, the train vanished, leaving nothing but the cold, empty tracks. Mike's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. "We need to leave," he said, his voice barely a whisper. But Sarah was rooted to the spot, her curiosity battling her fear. She had to know the truth, to uncover the secrets of this haunted place. As they turned to leave, a figure appeared before them. It was a woman, her face twisted in anguish, her eyes pleading for help. Sarah's camera flashed, capturing the ghostly image, but when the light faded, the woman was gone. Mike grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her towards the exit. "We're not alone," he said, his voice trembling. "This place is cursed." They ran through the station, the sounds of the past chasing them, whispers and cries filling the air. Sarah's camera flashed again and again, each photo revealing glimpses of the unseen, the souls trapped within the walls of the station. As they reached the exit, Mike stopped, his face stricken with grief. "My grandfather," he said, his voice breaking. "He was the conductor of that train. I've always felt his presence here, his regret." Sarah looked at him, her own fear replaced by empathy. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "We don't have to stay." But Mike shook his head. "No, we need to face this, to give them peace." They turned back, walking towards the heart of the station. The air grew heavier, the whispers louder, but they pushed on, determined to uncover the truth. As they reached the platform where the train had once stood, the air suddenly grew still. The whispers stopped, and a light appeared on the tracks. It was the train, its form solid and real, the windows glowing with a soft light. Mike stepped forward, his eyes filled with tears. "I'm here, grandfather," he called out. "I've come to set you free." The train's doors opened, and a figure stepped out. It was an old man, his face kind and gentle. He looked at Mike, a smile spreading across his face. "Thank you," he said, his voice echoing around them. "You've freed us all." With those words, the train and the old man vanished, leaving behind a sense of peace and closure. Sarah lowered her camera, tears in her eyes. They had faced the haunting of the abandoned station, and in doing so, they had set the past to rest. As they walked back into the night, Sarah knew that this was a story she would never forget, a tale of curiosity, fear, and ultimately, redemption. The station might have been abandoned, but its stories would live on, whispers in the night, echoes of a time gone by. Lost in the mountain's shadow, Emily, with her confident stride and keen eyes, led the way through the dense foliage of the mountain pass, her backpack full of essentials swinging gently with each step. David, less accustomed to the rugged outdoors, followed closely behind, his gaze alternating between the treacherous path and the breathtaking views. The mountains were known for their beauty and their treachery, a fact that Emily, a seasoned hiker, knew all too well. David, on the other hand, was new to this. He had joined Emily on this adventure to escape the monotony of city life, craving the thrill of nature. The remote mountain pass, with its winding trails and towering peaks, seemed like the perfect escape. As they ascended, the weather began to change. What started as a clear, sunny day soon turned into a blanket of fog that enveloped the mountains, obscuring their path. Emily checked her compass and the old map she'd found in a local shop, its edges worn and its lines faded. "We should be near the summit by now," she said, her voice laced with uncertainty. But as they continued, it became clear that they were lost. The trail, once marked by clear signs, had disappeared, replaced by a dense, uncharted wilderness. The fog grew thicker, and a chilling wind whispered through the trees. "That's not on the map," David said, pointing to a narrow, almost hidden path that veered off to the right. Emily hesitated, but with no other options, they decided to follow it. As they moved deeper into the unknown, the atmosphere changed. The trees seemed to close in on them, and the air was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant sound of an animal or perhaps something else. It was then that they saw the figure. It stood at a distance, shrouded in the mist, its form barely visible. Emily called out, but there was no response. The figure seemed to beckon them, leading them further into the depths of the mountains. "Are you sure we should follow it?" David asked, his voice tinged with fear. But Emily, driven by a mixture of curiosity and a desperate need to find a way out, pressed on. As they followed, the figure remained always just out of reach, leading them deeper and deeper into the wilderness. The weather grew worse, the wind howling like the cries of some ancient creature. The legends of the mountains, once just stories told by the locals, now seemed all too real. They spoke of spirits and curses, of travelers who ventured too deep and never returned. "We need to go back," David said, panic rising in his voice. But when they turned, the path they had followed was gone, swallowed by the fog in the forest. They were truly lost, with nothing but the mysterious figure to guide them. Night began to fall, and with it came a sense of impending doom. The temperature dropped, and the fog seemed to grow thicker, obscuring the stars and the moon. Hours passed, and exhaustion began to set in. They had no choice but to stop and rest, huddled together for warmth. The figure had disappeared, leaving them alone in the vast, unforgiving wilderness. As they sat, the silence of the night was broken by a faint, haunting melody. It seemed to come from all around them, a song of sorrow and longing that echoed off the mountains. Emily thought of the legends, of the spirits said to roam these peaks, mourning their fate. "We're not alone," David whispered, his eyes wide with fear. Emily didn't respond. She knew they were in the heart of the mountains now, in a place where the line between reality and superstition blurred. Morning came, but with it no relief. The fog lingered, and the path remained hidden. They decided to move, driven by a desperate hope of finding a way out. As they walked, the melody followed them, a constant reminder of their predicament. The figure reappeared, leading them further still. They had no choice but to follow, their bodies weary, their spirits broken. Finally, as the sun reached its peak, the fog began to lift. The figure stopped, pointing to a clearing in the distance. With the last of their strength, they moved towards it. There, in the clearing, lay the ruins of an old village, its buildings crumbling and overgrown. The figure vanished as they approached, leaving them alone in the silent ruins. Emily and David explored the village, finding remnants of a life long gone. The melody had stopped, replaced by a heavy silence. It was as if the village was holding its breath, waiting. In the center of the village, they found a stone altar, its surface covered in ancient symbols. As Emily approached, the air grew cold, and a sense of dread filled her heart. She looked at David, her eyes filled with fear. "We need to leave now." But as they turned to go, the fog returned, thicker than ever. The melody began again, louder, more insistent. They ran, but the village seemed to change around them, the buildings shifting, the paths twisting. The melody grew into a cacophony, a symphony of sorrow that filled the air. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The fog lifted, and they found themselves on the familiar trail, the one they had lost days ago. They didn't stop to question their luck. They followed the trail, finally emerging from the wilderness, back into the world they knew. As they looked back at the mountains, now calm and beautiful in the light of the setting sun, Emily knew they had experienced something beyond understanding, something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The mountains had shown them their power, their indifference. They had been lost in the shadow of the mountain, and though they had returned, a part of them would always remain there, caught in the melody of the ancient, forgotten village. Echoes of the Seaside Hotel. The Seaside Hotel, once a gem along the coast, now stood as a relic of the past, its walls worn by the salty air and the relentless passage of time. Anna, a writer with a passion for the mysterious and the unexplored, couldn't resist the allure of such a place. It was the perfect setting for her new novel, a story woven from the threads of Gothic horror. Lucas, the enigmatic owner of the hotel, welcomed her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His demeanor was as mysterious as the hotel itself, with a presence that spoke of untold stories and hidden truth. Anna couldn't help but feel there was more to Lucas and the hotel than met the eye. The hotel's interior was a labyrinth of corridors and rooms, each telling a story of decades past. The air was heavy with a sense of decay and the persistent echo of waves crashing against the shore. At night, the corridors were lit by flickering lights that cast long, ominous shadows. Anna's room overlooked the churning sea, the sound of the waves a constant companion in the stillness of the night. But it wasn't long before the tranquility of the setting gave way to an unsettling feeling. On her first night, Anna was plagued by vivid nightmares, a jumble of images and sounds that felt all too real. Whispering voices, the creaking of old floorboards, and the sight of ghostly figures wandering the halls filled her dreams. She woke up to the sound of the sea, the morning light doing little to dispel the unease that had settled in her heart. As she explored the hotel, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The portraits on the walls seemed to follow her with their eyes, and the air was thick with the scent of salt and something else, something unidentifiable. In the library, Anna found a hidden diary, its pages yellowed with age. The diary belonged to a previous owner of the hotel, and as she read, a chilling story unfolded. The entries spoke of sorrow and madness, of guests who vanished without a trace, and of a room that was kept locked at all times. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, Anna sought out the locked room. Lucas found her in the corridor, his expression one of concern, or was it fear? Some things are better left alone, he warned, but Anna's resolve only strengthened. That night, the nightmares returned with a vengeance. The ghostly guests from the past roamed the corridors, their whispers filling her ears. In her dream, she found herself standing before the locked room, its door creaking open to reveal the darkness within. Anna awoke with a start, her heart racing. She knew she had to uncover the truth about the hotel, about the room, and about Lucas. Her investigation led her to the heart of the hotel's dark history. The room had been the site of a tragic event, one that had left an indelible mark on the hotel and its inhabitants. Lucas finally revealed his connection to the hotel. He had been there on the night of the tragedy, a witness to the events that had unfolded in the locked room. The hotel, he explained, was a place where the past never truly died, where the echoes of old sorrows lingered in the air. Determined to put an end to the hotel's haunting, Anna decided to confront the past. She convinced Lucas to open the locked room, revealing a space frozen in time, untouched since that fateful night. As they stood in the room, the air grew colder and the whispers grew louder. The ghosts of the past emerged from the shadows, their faces twisted in anguish. Anna and Lucas found themselves reliving the events of that night, caught in a loop of sorrow and madness. With every ounce of her will, Anna broke free from the visions, her voice a beacon in the darkness. She spoke words of release, of forgiveness, a plea to the restless spirits to find peace. The hotel trembled as if releasing a long-held breath. The spirits faded away, their whispers dying in the air. The room, once a prison of the past, was now just a room, empty and silent. In the days that followed, the Seaside Hotel seemed to breathe easier, its walls no longer heavy with the weight of its history. Anna finished her novel, the story enriched by the truths she had uncovered. As she prepared to leave, she looked back at the hotel, its facade now a little less foreboding. Lucas stood at the door, a genuine smile on his face. The hotel would continue to stand, a testament to the past, but no longer a prisoner to it. Anna left the Seaside Hotel with a newfound understanding of the duality of human nature, of the thin line between reality and the echoes of the past. The hotel, with its ghostly guests and its locked room, would remain in her heart, a reminder of the journey into the depths of Gothic horror and the power of facing one's fears. Island of the Unseen. The sun was setting as Leo and Mia stumbled onto the deserted island, their lifeboat washing ashore after the harrowing shipwreck. The island, a mix of dense jungle and sandy beaches, seemed untouched by humanity. But as they ventured further, a chilling sensation crept over them. They couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. Their first night was filled with unsettling sounds from the jungle. Branches snapping, leaves rustling, and distant animal cries. They built a makeshift shelter by the beach, hoping for some semblance of safety. But as they tried to sleep, they heard something moving outside, something that wasn't just the wind. The next morning, they decided to explore the island, searching for food and perhaps a way to signal for help. The island was eerily quiet in the daylight, but the sense of being watched persisted. As they moved through the thick underbrush, they stumbled upon something unexpected: remnants of previous castaways, tattered clothes, a rusted knife, and a diary with pages torn out. It was clear they were not the first to find themselves stranded here, but it was the trees that held the most disturbing discovery. Carved into the bark were strange symbols, none that they recognized. The symbols seemed to form a pattern, leading deeper into the island. Despite their apprehension, curiosity drove them to follow the trail. As they delved further into the jungle, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The air was heavy, and the feeling of being watched intensified. Mia started to see shadows flitting between the trees, too quick to be just animals. Leo tried to reassure her, but the fear in his own eyes was unmistakable. Their journey led them to a clearing, where the symbols converged. In the center stood an ancient statue, its features eroded by time. The ground around it was littered with offerings, bones, stones, and more unsettlingly, personal items that looked like they belonged to the previous castaways. It was then that they felt it, a presence, malignant and intense, watching them from the shadows. They backed away slowly, but as they turned to leave, they heard a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from all directions. Panic set in as they ran back to their shelter, the sounds of pursuit echoing through the jungle. They barely made it back, breathless and terrified. That night, the noises outside their shelter were more aggressive, more purposeful. The next few days were a blur of fear and desperation. They tried to signal for help, lighting fires and creating makeshift signs on the beach, but it was as if the island itself was against them. The fires would inexplicably go out, and their signs were destroyed by the time they returned to them. The eerie animal behavior escalated. Birds would suddenly go silent, and they would find small animals dead without any apparent cause. Their shelter was tampered with every night, the entrance blocked or the supports weakened. Leo and Mia realized they were not merely stranded. They were being stalked by something unseen, something that didn't want them to leave the island. The paranoia consumed them, every sound and movement sending them into a panic. One night, the entity made itself known. Their shelter was violently shaken, the force of it nearly collapsing in on top of them. They heard a sound unlike any animal, a deep, resonant chanting that filled the night air. It was coming from the direction of the clearing. They knew they had to face whatever was haunting them. Armed with only the rusted knife and makeshift spears, they headed to the clearing under the cover of night. The island seemed alive, aware of their intentions, the jungle teeming with unseen eyes. At the clearing, the statue loomed over them, its presence more ominous than ever. The chanting grew louder, and the ground beneath them vibrated with the sound. They could feel the presence closing in, surrounding them. In a moment of desperation, Leo stepped forward, shouting into the darkness, challenging the unseen entity. Mia joined him, her voice a mix of fear and defiance. They stood together, united against the unknown. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the chanting stopped. The presence receded, and the jungle fell silent. They waited, but nothing happened. The statue, once a symbol of fear, now seemed just a piece of stone. As the sun rose, they returned to their shelter, exhausted but alive. The island seemed different in the daylight, less menacing. They continued to signal for rescue, hope slowly returning. Weeks later, they were finally spotted by a passing ship. As they sailed away from the island, they looked back at the dense jungle and the hidden clearing. The island had tested them, its unseen presence a constant threat. They would never know what stalked them or why it finally let them go. But as they left the island of the unseen behind, they carried with them a newfound strength, a resilience forged in the face of the unknown. The experience would haunt them, but it would also remind them of their will to survive, no matter the odds. Subterranean Screams. Carlos and Jenny stood at the entrance of the old subway tunnel, its dark maw yawning before them. They were an unlikely pair. Carlos, the daring urban explorer with a taste for the unknown, and Jenny, a history enthusiast drawn to the stories of the past. Together, they were about to delve into a forgotten chapter of the city's history. The tunnel, abandoned for decades, was a relic of a bygone era. Its tracks, once bustling with the life of the city, now lay silent and unused. The air was thick with the musty scent of damp and decay, and their flashlights barely penetrated the gloom. As they ventured deeper, the tunnel seemed to constrict around them, the walls pressing in with a weight of years. The only sounds were their footsteps and the distant, eerie drip of water. Carlos's excitement was palpable, his eyes shining in the flashlight's beam. Jenny, however, felt a growing sense of unease. It was as if the tunnel didn't want them there. Their first discovery was a collection of old newspaper clippings, yellowed with age and damp. They told of the tunnel's closure, of accidents and unexplained incidents that had plagued it in its final days. Jenny felt a shiver run down her spine as she read them. There was more to this place than just forgotten history. Deeper into the tunnel, they found a lost train car, its paint peeling, its windows broken and dark. It was a ghost of its former self, a remnant of a time when the tunnel was alive with the sound of travel and life. As they approached, a cold wind blew through the tunnel, carrying with it the faint sound of voices and laughter, echoes of the past that seemed almost real. Inside the train car, the air was even colder, a chill that seemed to seep into their bones. The seats were covered in a thick layer of dust, and cobwebs hung in the corners. As they explored, Jenny thought she saw movement out of the corner of her eye, a fleeting glimpse of something not quite there. Then they heard it, a scream, distant and muffled, as if coming from deep within the earth. It was followed by others, a chorus of cries that filled the tunnel, reverberating off the walls. Carlos and Jenny froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. "It's just the wind," Carlos said, but his voice betrayed his fear. They decided to head back, but as they turned to leave, the train car lurched, as if something had struck it. They stumbled, disoriented, and when they looked up, they saw them, spectral figures, passengers from a different time, their faces twisted in expressions of fear and despair. Carlos and Jenny ran, their footsteps echoing in the empty tunnel. The screams followed them, a constant reminder of the horrors they had awakened. As they neared the entrance, the tunnel began to collapse, the walls crumbling, the ceiling falling in pieces around them. They made it out just in time, the entrance collapsing behind them, sealing the tunnel and its ghosts once again in the darkness. They lay on the ground, gasping for breath, their hearts racing with adrenaline and fear. As they looked back at the sealed entrance, they knew they had narrowly escaped a fate worse than they could imagine. The tunnel had been more than just a forgotten place. It had been a tomb, a resting place for the echoes of the past. Carlos and Jenny never spoke of what they saw in the tunnel, but it stayed with them, a haunting memory of the day they delved too deep into the forgotten corners of the world. They had heard the subterranean screams, and they knew that some places were meant to remain undisturbed, their secrets buried in the darkness. Subterranean Screams. Carlos and Jenny stood at the entrance of the old subway tunnel, its dark maw yawning before them. They were an unlikely pair. Carlos, the daring urban explorer with a taste for the unknown, and Jenny, a history enthusiast drawn to the stories of the past. Together, they were about to delve into a forgotten chapter of the city's history. The tunnel, abandoned for decades, was a relic of a bygone era. Its tracks, once bustling with the life of the city, now lay silent and unused. The air was thick with the musty scent of damp and decay, and their flashlights barely penetrated the gloom. As they ventured deeper, the tunnel seemed to constrict around them, the walls pressing in with a weight of years. The only sounds were their footsteps and the distant, eerie drip of water. Carlos's excitement was palpable, his eyes shining in the flashlight's beam. Jenny, however, felt a growing sense of unease. It was as if the tunnel didn't want them there. Their first discovery was a collection of old newspaper clippings, yellowed with age and damp. They told of the tunnel's closure, of accidents and unexplained incidents that had plagued it in its final days. Jenny felt a shiver run down her spine as she read them. There was more to this place than just forgotten history. Deeper into the tunnel, they found a lost train car, its paint peeling, its windows broken and dark. It was a ghost of its former self, a remnant of a time when the tunnel was alive with the sound of travel and life. As they approached, a cold wind blew through the tunnel, carrying with it the faint sound of voices and laughter, echoes of the past that seemed almost real. Inside the train car, the air was even colder, a chill that seemed to seep into their bones. The seats were covered in a thick layer of dust, and cobwebs hung in the corners. As they explored, Jenny thought she saw movement out of the corner of her eye, a fleeting glimpse of something not quite there. Then they heard it, a scream, distant and muffled, as if coming from deep within the earth. It was followed by others, a chorus of cries that filled the tunnel, reverberating off the walls. Carlos and Jenny froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. "It's just the wind," Carlos said, but his voice betrayed his fear. They decided to head back, but as they turned to leave, the train car lurched as if something had struck it. They stumbled, disoriented, and when they looked up, they saw them, spectral figures, passengers from a different time, their faces twisted in expressions of fear and despair. Carlos and Jenny ran, their footsteps echoing in the empty tunnel. The screams followed them, a constant reminder of the horrors they had awakened. As they neared the entrance, the tunnel began to collapse, the walls crumbling, the ceiling falling in pieces around them. They made it out just in time, the entrance collapsing behind them, sealing the tunnel and its ghosts once again in the darkness. They lay on the ground, gasping for breath, their hearts racing with adrenaline and fear. As they looked back at the sealed entrance, they knew they had narrowly escaped a fate worse than they could imagine. The tunnel had been more than just a forgotten place. It had been a tomb, a resting place for the echoes of the past. Carlos and Jenny never spoke of what they saw in the tunnel, but it stayed with them, a haunting memory of the day they delved too deep into the forgotten corners of the world. They had heard the subterranean screams, and they knew that some places were meant to remain undisturbed, their secrets buried in the darkness. The village's dark secret. Nora had always been drawn to the hidden corners of the world, the places where secrets lingered like fog. As a journalist, she had uncovered truths that lay buried under layers of silence and fear. Her latest assignment brought her to a small, rural village tucked away in a forgotten valley. It was a picturesque place, with quaint houses and flowering meadows, but beneath its idyllic surface, something darker lurked. The villagers were polite but distant, their smiles strained, their eyes shadowed with something unspoken. Nora could feel their wariness, the way they watched her from behind curtained windows. There was a heaviness in the air, a sense of something untold, something hidden. Her investigation began at the local inn, where she heard whispers of disappearances, villagers who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind empty homes and unanswered questions. The more she asked, the more the villagers closed in on themselves, their words a mix of warnings and evasions. Nora's curiosity led her to the village's edge, where an ancient, overgrown path wound its way into the dense forest. There, hidden among the trees, lay an abandoned shrine, its stones covered in moss, its presence almost suffocating. As she explored the shrine, she found strange symbols carved into the stone, symbols that spoke of old rituals and forgotten gods. The air around the shrine was cold, the silence oppressive. It was as if the place itself was holding its breath, waiting. That night, Nora's dreams were filled with visions of shadowy figures moving through the forest, their faces hidden, their hands raised in some ancient rite. She woke with a start, the echo of their chants still ringing in her ears. Determined to uncover the truth, Nora delved deeper into the village's history. She discovered tales of old rituals, of sacrifices made to appease ancient deities, rituals that had been passed down through generations. It seemed the village's idyllic facade was a mask, hiding a darker, more primal reality. The villagers grew more hostile, their distrust turning to outright aggression. Nora knew she was close to uncovering something they were desperate to keep hidden. Her breakthrough came when she met an old woman, the village's outcast, who lived alone at the forest's edge. The woman spoke of a ritual that took place every few years, a ritual that ensured the village's prosperity and peace. It was a ritual of darkness, of sacrifice, and it was due to happen again. Nora's investigation had stirred something in the village, a sense of impending doom. She realized she was no longer just a journalist. She was a threat to their secret, a piece in a game she didn't fully understand. That night, as the moon rose high in the sky, Nora found herself being followed. Shadowy figures moved through the trees, their whispers carried on the wind. She ran, her heart pounding, her mind racing with fear. The chase led her back to the shrine, where the villagers had gathered, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of torches. They were no longer the polite, distant people she had met. They were transformed, their eyes filled with fervor, their voices raised in a chant that chilled her to the bone. Nora realized the truth then. The ritual was not just a relic of the past. It was alive, a part of the village's very soul. She had uncovered their dark secret, but at what cost? The villagers closed in, their intentions clear in their eyes. Nora prepared to fight, to scream, to do whatever it took to survive. But as they reached for her, the old woman appeared, her voice cutting through the night. "Enough," she cried, her presence commanding. The villagers stopped, their fervor breaking like a spell. The old woman spoke of change, of letting go of the darkness that had held the village in its grasp for so long. She spoke of a new path, one of light and truth. The villagers listened, their anger fading, replaced by a dawning realization. They had been prisoners of their own history, bound by rituals that no longer held meaning. It was time to let go, to step into the light. Nora left the village the next day. Her story written not in the black and white of truth and lies, but in the gray of human nature. The village's dark secret was a reminder of the cost of uncovering the truth, of the shadows that lurk in the heart of every idol. But there was hope too, in the old woman's words, in the possibility of change. The village would never be the same, and neither would Nora. She had looked into the darkness and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more aware of the complexities of the human soul. Labyrinth of the Cursed Forest. Alex, a seasoned park ranger, had seen his fair share of lost hikers in the dense, sprawling forest that bordered the small town. But nothing could have prepared him for the distress call he received that foggy evening. A group of hikers had ventured into the forest and hadn't returned. As night fell, Alex knew he had to act fast. Equipped with his trusty compass, a flashlight, and years of experience, Alex entered the forest. The forest was notorious for its labyrinth of trails, which seemed to twist and turn in impossible ways. Tonight, the forest felt different, more menacing, as if it was alive and watching. As he ventured deeper, the fog thickened, swallowing the weak beam of his flashlight. The trees loomed over him, their branches like gnarled hands reaching out. In the silence, Alex thought he heard whispers, but when he stopped to listen, there was only the sound of his own breath. After what felt like hours, he finally found the group of hikers. They were huddled together, visibly shaken and scared. They spoke of trails that seemed to change, landmarks that appeared and disappeared, and a feeling of being watched. Determined to lead them out, Alex took the lead, his compass in hand. But as they walked, it became clear that the forest was not going to let them leave easily. The compass spun wildly, its usual reliability gone. The trails seemed to shift before their eyes, leading them in circles. Panic began to set in, both for Alex and the hikers. The forest felt like a predator, toying with its prey. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices that seemed to come from the very trees themselves. In the flashes of his flashlight, Alex saw faces in the bark, twisted and grotesque, their eyes following their every move. It was then that they saw it. An otherworldly creature, part shadow, part mist. It moved between the trees, its form barely discernible, its presence filling them with dread. The hikers screamed, and Alex felt a chill run down his spine. This was no ordinary forest, and they were not alone. The creature seemed to herd them, guiding them deeper into the forest. Alex realized that their only chance was to outsmart it, to find a way through the labyrinth that was both physical and mental. He urged the hikers to stay close, to focus on the sound of his voice, and to ignore the whispers that sought to disorient them. Hours passed, and the forest seemed endless. The creature was always there, just out of sight, its presence a constant threat. But Alex refused to give up. He remembered an old legend, a story his grandmother had told him about the forest, that it was alive, and that it tested those who entered its domain. With a newfound determination, Alex led the group, relying on instinct more than his now useless compass. He spoke words of encouragement, trying to keep the hikers calm. They depended on him, and he would not let them down. Finally, as the first light of dawn broke through the canopy, they saw it, the edge of the forest. The creature let out a wail, a sound of defeat, and vanished into the mist. They emerged from the forest, exhausted but alive. The town's search party was waiting for them, relief and joy on their faces. Alex looked back at the forest, its trees now just ordinary wood and leaves in the light of day. But he knew better. He had seen the true face of the forest, the labyrinth that was both a physical place and a test of one's will. He had faced the creature of the shadows and had come out victorious. The hikers thanked him, calling him a hero. But Alex knew that it was not just him. It was the strength they had found together, the courage to face the unknown and the determination to keep going, even when all seemed lost. The labyrinth of the cursed forest would remain, a place of mystery and fear. But for those who had survived its trials, it was a reminder of their strength, of the power of the human spirit in the face of the unknown. Whispers of the Deserted City. Laura, an intrepid archaeologist with a passion for uncovering the secrets of the past, stood at the edge of an ancient, abandoned city that time had forgotten. Beside her was Tom, a documentary filmmaker eager to capture the mysteries hidden within the city's crumbling walls. They were about to embark on an adventure that would uncover more than just relics and ruins. The city, lost to the sands for centuries, was a labyrinth of stone and secrets. As they ventured through its deserted streets, Laura's excitement was palpable. She marveled at the cryptic hieroglyphs that adorned the walls, speaking of a civilization long gone. Tom filmed every step, his camera capturing the eerie beauty of the city. The air was heavy with the weight of history, and every stone seemed to whisper tales of the past. But as they delved deeper into the heart of the city, a sense of unease began to grow. They found a mysterious artifact, an ancient relic that hummed with an unseen energy. As Laura examined it, the ground trembled, and a sandstorm erupted from nowhere, engulfing the city in a whirlwind of sand and mystery. When the storm cleared, they found themselves in a part of the city that was previously hidden, its paths revealed by the shifting sands. In this new area, the atmosphere grew more ominous. The hieroglyphs here spoke of a curse, a warning to those who dared to disturb the slumber of the city. Laura's curiosity turned to apprehension. But it was too late. The curse had been awakened. As night fell, the city transformed. Shadows moved in the corners of their eyes, and spectral guardians, phantoms of the city's past, appeared on the streets. They were ethereal and menacing, their eyes glowing with an ancient rage. Tom's camera captured these apparitions, his fascination battling his fear. Laura, realizing the gravity of their situation, knew they needed to find a way to lift the curse. They raced against time, deciphering the cryptic messages that held the key to their salvation. Their search led them to a crypt hidden beneath the city. The inscriptions on its door spoke of a ritual, a way to appease the angered spirits. Inside, they found the remains of the city's ancient rulers, their tombs adorned with jewels and gold. But it was not wealth that would lift the curse. It was respect and understanding. Laura, drawing on her knowledge of ancient cultures, performed a ritual of appeasement, offering respects to the spirits of the past. As she chanted the ancient words, the city trembled, and the spectral guardians converged on the crypt. Tom filmed, his hands shaking, as the phantoms circled around them. The air crackled with energy, and the spirit's anger seemed to reach a crescendo. Then, suddenly, there was silence. The guardians vanished, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The curse was broken. Laura and Tom emerged from the crypt, the first rays of dawn illuminating the city. It was as if a weight had been lifted, the air now clear and free of the whispers that had filled it. As they left the city, Laura reflected on the experience. They had awakened a past that was meant to remain hidden, but in doing so, they had also respected and honored it. The city, with its whispered secrets and spectral guardians, was a reminder of the past's influence on the present and the dangers of disturbing what was meant to remain undisturbed. Tom's documentary would tell the story of their adventure, of the whispers of the deserted city. But for Laura, it was more than just an exploration. It was a journey into the heart of history, a reminder of the respect and understanding that the past deserved. The city returned to its slumber, its secrets once again hidden beneath the sands. But its whispers would linger in Laura's mind, a haunting melody of a time long gone but never truly forgotten. Nightmare at the Crossroads Inn. Rachel, a weary traveler after a long day's journey, found solace in the sight of the Crossroads Inn, its quaint facade promising rest and warmth. The inn, nestled at the junction of two old country roads, seemed to beckon her in with its cozy charm. Upon entering, she was greeted by Mr. Simmons, the innkeeper. His smile was polite, yet his eyes held a glint of something Rachel couldn't quite place. He handed her the key to her room, his fingers lingering a moment too long over hers. The room was charming, with antique furnishings and a large, comfortable bed. But as Rachel settled in, she noticed oddities, a clock on the wall that ran backward, and mirrors that seemed to flicker with shadows just at the edge of her vision. Exhausted, she decided to rest, but sleep eluded her. The inn, so inviting from the outside, now felt suffocating. The walls seemed to close in, and the air grew heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. In the middle of the night, Rachel was jolted awake by the sound of whispers. She sat up, her heart pounding, and saw ghostly apparitions reflected in the room's mirror. They were fleeting glimpses of people, their faces twisted in fear and despair. Frightened, she ran out of her room, only to find the hallway transformed. The once charming inn was now a labyrinth of dark, twisting corridors. She could hear soft, disorienting whispers and the backward ticking of the clock, as if time itself was being unraveled. Rachel realized she was trapped in a nightmarish loop. The inn changed around her, rooms and hallways shifting in impossible ways. She saw Mr. Simmons occasionally, his figure flickering at the end of hallways, always out of reach, always watching. As dawn approached, Rachel found herself back in her room, as if the night's horrors had been just a dream. But the backward clock in the flickering mirrors told her otherwise. She confronted Mr. Simmons, demanding answers. His demeanor changed then, the polite innkeeper replaced by a man with a dark, twisted smile. He revealed the truth. The inn was cursed, a prison for those who stumbled upon it. The guests, trapped in time loops, were doomed to relive their nightmares each night. Rachel refused to accept this fate. She remembered an ancient book she had seen in the lounge, its pages filled with cryptic warnings and spells. She realized that the book held the key to breaking the curse. As night fell again, the inn transformed, and Rachel was thrust back into the nightmare. This time, however, she was prepared. She navigated the shifting corridors, her mind focused on the book. She found it, hidden away in a secret compartment in the lounge. The book was old and bound in leather, its pages yellowed with age. It spoke of the inn's history, of a pact made with dark forces long ago by an ancestor of Mr. Simmons. The curse was tied to the inn, a trap for lost souls. Rachel found the spell to break the curse, but it required a sacrifice, a part of her own essence. She hesitated, knowing this would forever link her to the inn's twisted history. But the thought of being trapped in endless terror spurred her on. She recited the spell, her voice echoing in the cursed halls of the inn. The apparitions in the mirrors screamed, their faces contorting in agony as the curse lifted. The inn shook, its walls groaning as if in pain. Mr. Simmons appeared, his face twisted in rage. He lunged at Rachel, but she was quicker. She dodged him, and he stumbled into one of the flickering mirrors. With a scream that echoed through the now still halls of the inn, he vanished. As dawn broke, the inn returned to its quaint appearance. But for Rachel, it would never be the same. She had broken the curse, but at a cost. A part of her would always remain there, a remnant of her soul forever entwined with the Crossroads Inn. She left the inn at the first light of day, the backward clock now ticking forward, the mirrors clear. The nightmares would haunt her, but she had survived. The Crossroads Inn remained, its dark history hidden behind a facade of quaint charm, a reminder of the cyclical nature of fate and the illusion of safety. Caverns of the Forgotten. Jack and Eliza, equipped with their headlamps and climbing gear, stood at the entrance of the uncharted caves, ready to unravel the secrets hidden within the earth. Jack, a thrill-seeking caver, had a glint of excitement in his eyes, while Eliza, a geologist, was eager to study the cave's ancient formations. The caverns were a sprawling maze of tunnels and chambers, untouched and unseen by the outside world. As they delved deeper, the light from their headlamps revealed the cave's eerie beauty. Stalactites and stalagmites jutted out like the jaws of some giant beast, and the walls shimmered with bioluminescent organisms, casting an otherworldly glow. The deeper they went, the more alien the world around them seemed. The air was heavy, thick with the weight of the earth above them. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of their footsteps and the occasional drip of water. As they explored, they came across something unexpected. Ancient, undiscovered ruins hidden deep within the caves. Walls adorned with strange symbols and carvings hinted at a lost civilization that had once thrived in these depths. Eliza was fascinated, her geologist's mind racing with theories and questions. But Jack felt a sense of unease growing within him. The caves felt alive, as if they were being watched by unseen eyes. Their exploration took a terrifying turn when they encountered the cave creatures. They were unlike any life form known to man, creatures of the dark, adapted to a life without light. Their eyes glowed in the darkness, and their movements were quick and skittish. Jack and Eliza found themselves in a fight for survival, navigating through the treacherous caverns while evading these bizarre creatures. With each step, the sense of danger grew, the primal fear of the unknown depths gnawing at their minds. As they sought a way out, they heard it, a mysterious echoing voice coming from the heart of the caves. It was melodic yet haunting, a voice that seemed to speak directly to their souls. They followed the voice, drawn by its enigmatic allure. The voice led them to a grand chamber, the heart of the caverns. Here, the bioluminescent glow was brightest, illuminating an ancient altar at the center. The source of the voice was a figure, ethereal and ghostly, an apparition of the civilization that had once dwelled here. The figure spoke of the cave's history, of the people who had once lived in harmony with the darkness. But their greed had led to their downfall, disturbing forces they did not understand. The caves were now a tomb, a reminder of the past's mistakes. Jack and Eliza realized that the creatures were the guardians of these caves, protectors of the forgotten civilization's legacy. They understood that they were intruders, trespassers in a world that was not meant for them. The way out was fraught with danger. Sudden cave-ins blocked their path, and the creatures lurked in the shadows, watching their every move. But Jack and Eliza pushed on, their determination fueled by the desire to see the light of day once more. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged from the caverns, blinking against the brightness of the outside world. They were changed, their experience in the depths a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The caverns of the forgotten remained, a hidden world of darkness and mystery. Jack and Eliza would never forget their journey, a journey that had taken them to the very limits of fear and beyond. They had faced the unknown depths of the earth and had come back with a newfound respect for the mysteries that lay hidden beneath our feet.